Good afternoon. So pleased to have you here today. I was thrilled when Hank Keith sent me an email and said, please schedule me a town meeting with your residents. And said he wanted to go over strategic goals, Chapter 651, other hot topics of interest. And so we're so glad to have Hank Keith here today. So welcome, Hank.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me pretty well? Okay, it's always good to be up here in Tallahassee, even though it's not my favorite city, because orange and blue does not seem to go very well up here. So, but at least Florida's in the basketball championship, so it's just some good things. So I always like to get my meetings started on a positive standpoint. So as Shannon told you, I'm Hank Keith. I am your Chief Executive Officer, and yes, I am still the Chief Financial Officer for a short period of time here. The new Chief Financial Officer has been chosen. Her name is Jennifer Martins. She's worked for me for about 12 years. So we're just waiting for her to be approved by the OIR. So I hope I don't make them too mad the next few days so that they will still approve her. So I noticed as I started my slides, I started with that slide. I probably should have put more of an introductory or happier slide up there than Chapter 651, but it is an important subject. So I was up here yesterday. I started up here yesterday. Meeting with the bill sponsor of the Senate and a bunch of people from the OIR and the other insurance stuff, property and casual and auto and things like that. Then we went to the hearings after that, so I'll bring you up to date on all that going forward. And some updates I got just a few minutes ago. But once again, thank you for all your help. We appreciate you writing all your letters. I heard that a number of times from the legislators, and that was very interesting. They kept saying, we've heard it very loud that there are some concerns out there. So thank you for doing that. I think it has helped. It has raised a lot more questions. This is just not another bill just going through that'll just get passed and nobody will review. So they have looked at it. So I'm not asking you at the present time to release any more emails or letters at this point. We think they've got the message at this point, but I'll need to see the next day or so of where we're at this point. So there appears to be a kind of negotiated settlement, and I'm not sure it will work for our organization, but like I said, I haven't seen it completely yet, so I do apologize for that. So the bill's sponsor gave the Office of Insurance Regulation, I'm going to call them OIR, so if I use that abbreviation a lot, that's what that means. It's the Office of Insurance Regulation, has given the staff until Thursday, end of day, to have a revised bill, another amendment to their bill passed or through us and everybody and all parties. So we're not sure if they're going to be able to do that or not, but we're going to help them as much as we can to get to that point. And just to repeat, the main issue that we had was this is a bill from the Office of Insurance Regulation. It was not a collaborative bill like it was in 2019 and the bills before then. I'm a firm believer that you really have to bring all the parties together, put them around a table together and say, we want to do this. Okay, if you do this, you're going to cause this. And this person will say, well, if you do it this way, this probably works. And that's all we've really been wanting the whole time. After the OIR released their bill, you guys had started sending out letters out. The OIR started making visits to various providers. We visited with them 4 times, and other providers have also visited with them, and residents have visited with them. So they are trying to make adjustments. They realize they put a really big thing out there that has a number of problems with it, so even just technically. But anything, we really want just a bill that's got everybody in it, especially residents. Since you live at a continuing care retirement community, you're the ones mostly impacted by that. So, and if they don't even come out to visit the Oaks on a routine basis, we've offered for them to come to the Oaks and just tour, not even have lunch, because it might be illegal for us to buy lunch for them. I'm not sure about that. Might be an inducement. So, but they haven't done that either, so it's a little disappointing. So remaining items of concern, liens. Liens are probably the biggest one that I see in here. Basically, it would create a lien on the behalf of the residents, which is okay if the community is failing. You try to get a lien in place so that the residents have something left if the community is really going into liquidation. But how do you create a lien if the property is running just fine? We're A- rated entity. We're 93% occupied. Oaks is, I believe, over 95 or 96% occupied right now. Why would you place a lien on us? A lien is supposed to be placed when you have money to pass due. So if you're working with a contractor and you haven't paid your bill on time, they place a lien on you. So why would you do that? And the way the bill is currently written, it gives the commissioner of the Office of Insurance Regulation it can do it anytime they want to. And wouldn't they just go ahead and do it if it's a protection for the residents? If there is a lien in place, when we go to borrow money like we did in '24, we have to clear every lien that's out there. So even if the lien is $100, we have to go figure out, what is that lien? Is it really a lien? Is it gone? Is it just old? Whatever it is. Now, if the OIR has a lien on, let's say, there's 800 residents at this community that's involved with that lien, how do we clear a lien on 800 residents? And according to the way it's written now, the commissioner can just put it in or take it away. But why would they ever take it away if it's a protection for the residents going forward? So it's kind of a confusing stat. We'd rather have them do a lien when there's something going on. Something going wrong at the community is when you want to put a lien in place. So at best we could, if at best we could borrow, go ahead, come on. There you go. At best, we would be borrowing, with the liens in place, we'd be borrowing at second mortgage rates. So currently we borrow at about 4 to 4.5%. We'd probably be borrowing at 6 to 8%. So that would make expensive projects more expensive. You're fortunate here at the Oaks, you don't have any large capital improvements like new buildings or new construction going on at this campus or planned currently, but you could down the road. What if there was one down the road? Because we do have additional land, if you guys don't know that, for about 300 units on this property as is. Well, I'm not saying I'm going to build it. It's just that we've acquired it over the years, as we've always done at all of our communities. We've acquired adjacent property to protect our property and to potentially build more units. Because number one, if you build more units at the Oaks, you have to build more infrastructure to go with it. So it's a little bit more complicated. But with a lien in place, I think it might make it too expensive or almost impossible to get additional financing. So where would we obtain funds for large capital projects? Let's say the infrastructure studies come back and we need to replace the pipes in the Oak South and a couple other buildings. Let's say it's $5 million. Where would the funds come from? They could come from reserves. They could come from entrance fees. But what if those weren't available at that time? Where would they come from? Or don't talk about the Oaks, talk about other communities that aren't doing as well as the Oaks or Westminster. Where would they get the funds? Probably from an assessment. Because right now, how much do the residents pay for capital improvements? You don't pay anything for capital improvements. It all came out of your entrance fees and reserves that we have. Your monthly fees do not pay for assessments. But if we had to start paying it out of monthly fees, it would make us what? More like a condo association versus a continuing care retirement community. So that's some of the concerns. I've spoken to the OIR about this. We're still having a debate on how it should be done. I understand where they're coming from, but I'm not sure it's the correct answer. And a lien would not stop a provider going into bankruptcy. The OIR is trying to come up with a way to legally stop federal bankruptcy. And from what I understand, I'm a CPA, I am not an attorney, it's virtually impossible to stop somebody from going into federal bankruptcy. There's really no state laws that can stop somebody from doing that. So I wish them luck with that. Maybe there's new provisions or smarter lawyers. I'm not sure which one. So there was some discussion about creating a guarantee fund. And if you ever remember when you paid property insurance or your car insurance, something like that, there was there's all those multiple fees and taxes that you see on there, and you go like, what is all this other stuff? I was quoted this, but here's taxes and all this other stuff. Well, probably in one of those lines is something called a guarantee fund. And basically what it does is if your property insurance carrier went broke during a big hurricane, there's a guarantee fund that everybody's been paying into that would help subsidize that insurance company to get all the claims paid. So there was talk about that yesterday, but that is a monumental thing to cross by Thursday. So I don't know if that will go anywhere. It's an interesting concept. Just not sure how it would work, how it would be dispersed, what would be the basis for it being dispersed. I just don't know how this would work. So, and definitely couldn't get it on to the session, and more than likely it would be a cost passed on to residents, which I do not know what that could be. It could be 2%, it could be 1%, I really do not know. If this bill had passed back in 1983, going way back in time, I'm not sure we could have borrowed the funds to add more units at Westminster Oaks. For anybody who's been here since the Oaks opened, which I don't think there is anybody, including myself. There's one. Are they in attendance today? Okay, sorry. Good for them if they're still here. Good, jeez. We probably couldn't have borrowed funds for the Oaks. The Oaks, if you weren't here, which only one person was, the Oaks did not do well when it first opened. It was actually failing. It was losing $50,000 a month. This was 35, 40 years ago, okay? They didn't have the villa units. So our CEO came in at that time when they were failing and said, I need to borrow funds. So I went to Barnett Bank. Anybody remember Barnett Bank way back when? I can't even tell what the name is now. But they came in, loaned money to the organization, built the villas, and the Oaks took off from there. So that's one of the dangers of the liens, is does it stop a campus from being successful? Because the Oaks went from probably 100 units to over 600 units throughout its history. So something to be very careful about. Also, Westminster Shores, our community in St. Petersburg, Westminster Suncoast in St. Petersburg, Julington Creek, and Westminster St. Augustine. If that lien had been in place, I am not sure we would have acquired those properties as they were. The three properties, excluding St. Augustine, were not in bankruptcy. They just were floundering a little bit financially, so they needed some help. So Westminster St. Augustine was in its second bankruptcy. I don't know that we could have borrowed the money out of bankruptcy to save that community. So liens do not prevent a community from closing, and I think that's really the key I've been trying to stress to the Office of Insurance Regulation. This is not a property insurance policy or a car insurance policy. These are people's homes, and you have to treat it differently than a normal insurance policy that you see every day. It's got to be treated differently because this is people's homes. Because at the end of the day, residents want to keep their home. They don't want to have to move or go anywhere else. So that's the way the statute needs to be written for everybody. Affiliates seems a little bit long and drawn out. They got into the cistern laws and some other things in there as part of the bill. And I'd always been taught the more you get detailed, the less coverage you have. So if you're more general about an affiliate, it catches more flies, as you might say. I think it leaves some potential affiliates out. Also in there, it talks about committees that are part of the operation of the business. And if I'm not mistaken, the Oaks has an activities committee, a dining committee, probably a wellness committee, probably 100 other committees that really determine some of the offerings at the community. Would you have to be fingerprinted and background checked at that point? Well, that's what it says. I said, are you sure you want committees? And I've told them 3 times. It's still sitting there. So I'm hoping this last time they've gotten it, but I'm not sure if they've had. They pledged to fix it, so we'll just assume they're going to fix that. Minimum liquor reserve. So basically, the minimum liquor reserve, as you know, is required by the state of Florida, been required since 1983 when the statute was first written. It's basically 15% of your 3-year annual operating cost, average cost, 15% of your accumulated depreciation, and 1 year's debt service. Pretty simple calculation. The OIR wants that to put it into separate bank accounts, which is okay, just costs a little bit more money, costs about $5,000 a year to have another bank account, so not a huge deal. But they're doing that because the trustee, those funds are all held by a trustee. And in that trustee agreement, the trustee is not allowed to give it to the provider unless the state of Florida, OIR, says you can do that. Well, in Unison, the bankruptcy case in Tampa, and a couple other cases, the trustee just gave the funds back to the community with no state approval. So yesterday I asked them, okay, so that's the issue. The trustees aren't doing what they're supposed to be. I said, yes. So at Unison, did you sue the trustee for the $5 million that you gave to the provider that's gone now? And they said, well, no. I said, do you still allow them to be a trustee in the state of Florida? And they said, yes. I'm like, well, when you have a bad provider or a bad partner, don't you quit using them? Or put some other things on there? So I think the state of Florida should just say, hey, this is the rule. If you break it, we're going to sue you for the money that you gave away that you aren't supposed to use. And I bet that trust company would probably wake up at that point. But the OAR wants to get more accounts and track more data on these 3 accounts, potentially 4 accounts, versus just simplifying it and making the trustee do their job. So it's just an overkill and just won't solve the issue because you've got the same trustee sitting there. If a regulatory event is met, this is my personal favorite section, sorry, is a regulatory event, which is mean they're doing something very bad, administrative supervision, which they mean they've broken the rules somewhere, hazardous financial condition, which means probably what? They ain't got no money. Or the intent to file bankruptcy, which I'm not sure how you figure out somebody's got the intent to file bankruptcy unless they just flat tell you, or fails to fund the minimum liquid reserve. So if they find all that out, they want to double your operating reserve. So if you're already broke, where are you going to get the $2 million to put in the operating reserve? And I haven't gotten that one through yet to everybody yet. So, and if they did do it, if they can't get the money from the community, where are they going to get the money from? They have to assess the residents, the only people left. And are you going to pay additional money in to a community that's under regulatory event, under administrative supervision, hazardous financial condition, the intent to file bankruptcy, or fails to file their minimum liquid reserve? You want to put more money in? I don't think so. Just doesn't make any good sense. And nobody's going to loan you money when you're in that status. Disclosures. It appears the way it's written right now that you would not be able to receive the annual proposed budget until the chair of the resident council receives it first. And I'm like, why? What does it matter? It's not going to change when the resident council chair gets it. Why can't the residents have it at the same time? And I don't know. I do not know where they got this from. I'm not sure why the lack of transparency is in there. Because if anything, you should be giving it out at the exact same time, which we know that once we give it to the resident council chair, more than likely it's being submitted around the community, which is fine. That doesn't bother us at all. So, management company, they've decided to regulate management companies like ourselves. Westminster Services is who I work for. So does this take away time from their retirement communities where the actual homes of residents are? Are they spending time on management companies versus the actual retirement community? They didn't address if it's part of an obligated group like ours. It's all related party. So Westminster Services is inside. It's all related by the same board of directors. Everybody's one big happy family as part of that. So how does that fit? It's not addressed in there either. Currently, we only manage what we own, which I think, in case you didn't know that. But if this bill were to pass in 2025 and go into effect in 2025, if a management company had an operating loss in 24, they would not be approved to be a management company. So they'd have to magically go back in time into 24 and become positive somehow. And I don't know how you do that. So they've kind of done one of the classic legislation where it says, okay, we've just now changed the rules, and we're going to look at you back in time. It's like saying your taxes. Oh, we meant to tax you back here. No, you only can do it going forward. So how do you do that? And how many good management companies do you eliminate? Because a management company typically operates at a loss. Typically, not ours, is a not-for-profit, but they're typically for-profits. And for-profits do not like to pay what? Income tax. So they're going to show, generally, some kind of operating loss, if they can. So they're not paying any taxes that way. I'm not making this up. This is right out of the amendment. So would the management company change their agreement to say, okay, now I have to be positive every year, therefore I'm going to add a clause into our management fee instead of just a percentage. We'll also be able to assess so our management company becomes positive at the end of the year. because you have to be positive every year under this proposed statute. And I'm like, why do you care? It's not their home. And profitability, it didn't define profitability. Is it $1 or is it 10% or what is it? Staffing levels, they've used staffing levels. Staffing level is a skilled nursing and assisted living term. And I will assure you that Westminster Services, Inc., your management company, does not have any nurses that are on the floor or certified nurses aides that are on the floor. Okay, so I ask why. And if there was a correct staffing level, which there is no such thing for management companies, how would they know what the correct level is? So if the management company is related to or part of the obligated group and have an operating loss in that 1 year, does the related management company then just move the employees to one of the continuing care retirement communities corporation? And does that continuing care retirement community become a management company or a continuing care retirement community or both? And then which rules? It's not as simple as they've tried to write it. It's just not that simple. They're trying to eliminate bad managers, and this is not going to do it. And do you know that a manager of a retirement community, sorry, not manger, but manager, sorry about that, can be hired and put in place before they're approved by the Office of Insurance Regulation. And sometimes it could be 3 to 7 months. We had the executive director of Julington Creek move to Winter Park. He had to be approved again. We were fine with that, but they allowed him to be the executive director for 3 months before they agreed to approve him. So if they're trying to get rid of a bad manager, why would you allow a bad manager in the first place? And why would you have them wait until they approve it going forward? Because we can't even put a certified nursing aide on the floor or a nurse on the floor until ACA gives us the approval. So why don't you do the same thing for managers? Make sense? More items concerned. We have more than that in the bill, some little nits here and there. I wasn't going to go through all that today. You don't want to hear it all today, but as you look at the proposed amendment, and there might be another one out here Thursday, please dive into the details if you can. If you have questions, I know you guys know how to find me, so please find me, and I'm happy to answer your questions if you have it about the bill. But it's the point in time where we need to start talking about the details in the bills versus just a general, we're just going to pass it in general. It's time to start talking about the details because it is going to impact you. So as I said, we met with the OIR on 4 different occasions. The Senate bill sponsor wants to present a bill that makes sense for the residents of the industry. That is Representative Collins out of Tampa. But we really need some attorney help here, some lender help. We need some other help besides myself, FLICRA, and some other groups to really take a look at this and what is legally correct and what we can legally do. So in the end, we just need to protect our residents' home. So it's a big item. So it's still your right to continue to write or email legislators. I cannot stop you, or we cannot stop you from doing that, so that's totally your choice. As I said, we expect Thursday, end of day, probably Friday morning, we will have a new bill. That's going to be a lot of work. We are having a conference here. Leading Age Southeast is having a conference here starting tonight. So there's a number of providers coming in right now. And so we'll be able to work on the bill. And then I leave sometime on Thursday, hopefully, if everything's gotten to where it's gotten to at that point. So I would say this is a new role for me, but it's not. I've typically done the Chapter 651 revisions pretty much since I started with the organization 33 years ago. So, FLICRA, Florida Life Care Residents Association, let me be clear, we are still very supportive of this organization, okay? We might be at differences right now, which is okay, families do fight, but we might have some differences, but we need to work together to get the bill correct for both parties. So, we hope they'll join us at the table. We believe they will at the end of the day, but it's time to join together and do the correct bill. But we are supportive of FLICRA. So with that, I will leave it for 651 questions. If you have some questions. Yes, sir. Wait a minute. You got to wait for the microphone. There you go.
Sorry. Yeah, two quick questions. One, could we get copies of your outline here?
Yes. Yes, Leona has copies of those, so you can have those.
Good, okay. Number two, your early comments about liens, who would the liens be in favor of, or who is looking to be protected by the liens?
The residents will be protected by the liens. So right now, the way it's written, the liens would be in favor, in front of any bondholders or lender. So if there was a liquidation, the residents would be paid first, the lenders would be paid second. I understand that might have already been revised as we're speaking to where it's flipped back to the other way, but I'm not 100% sure of that. But if you're a lender and now your position is number two, it's like a first mortgage, second mortgage. It's pretty simple. First mortgage, the lender has the mortgage. Second mortgage, the lender might have the house, might not have the house going forward. So, got another question? She's headed, Toria. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, thanks for taking this. I think you left out a couple of important provisions in the lien section of the bill, which I'd like to ask about. Assuming that every single CCRC would have a lien placed on it, and I haven't seen any explicit language in the bill that says that's what would happen. There are two reliefs possible to CCRCs who do have a lien placed against them. One is if the CCRC can demonstrate to the OIR that they are operating like they should and providing the needed services, the OIR can remove the lien. The second one is they can get the lien removed specifically for first mortgage financing if they apply to the OIR and they agree to do that. Now, I will grant you there's no language that says what criteria the OIR would use to place the lien in the first place or to relieve you from a lien using one of those two mechanisms, but the mechanisms are in the bill, and I don't know from a practical standpoint how draconian the OIR would be in refusing to remove the liens if the communities are doing what they ought to be doing.
Agree with you completely, and that's one of the big problems with the section. It really doesn't have triggers. It needs to have triggers when it can and cannot do it. Because once you put it in place, let's say they put it in place on everybody, somebody comes back and says, I want to borrow $50 million. So the OIR looks at the numbers, looks at the studies and everything, and says, yes, we're going to release it. And that $50 million really causes them financial problems. What's the OIR going to look like? Why did you release the lien? You shouldn't have released the lien. And my concern is, will the OIR get scared if there's not proper triggers for taking it on or taking it off? Because I don't think they should be put on like us, A- rated, 93% occupied, performing well, came through COVID at 93% occupied. It doesn't make any sense. And there are a number of providers like us. Most of the providers in the state of Florida are like that. So they want the liens, the OIR wants the liens on people getting close to being in trouble, but the statute doesn't say that. That's why it needs that trigger in there to do that. So hopefully they'll come back with some kind of triggers, which if you've read 651, there are a number of triggers like that for things to happen. Next question. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you.
My name is Sally Butzine, and I'm the president of our FLICRA here. So I really appreciate that you said you're supportive of FLICRA. And I know that FLICRA is with you at the table. We had some people speak yesterday. And of course, we were really surprised when you sent the letter out asking everybody to basically kill the bill, because there were good things in there for residents. And we do think that the OIR's intention, as you said, is to prevent some of these catastrophes where residents are having to move and lose all their money. So anyway, we're with you to work together, and we want to be sure that the residents' interests are maintained along with you as the owner-operators.
Well,
so thanks for being here, and I'll hope to meet you later.
Thank you for those comments. Yes, I will say Leading Age and FLICRA have been at differences on this bill. There's no question about it. They have had their differences. It is time to end those differences because we're getting down to the nitty-gritty, and we need to finalize, if we need to finalize, what needs to be there. We wanted to kill the bill simply because it was not a group effort. We did not say there was bad things in there, which there were, and there still are, but it needed to be a group effort because like the gentleman back in the back here who talked about liens, I would love to have him at the table, because obviously he knows a lot about liens. You need those kind of people around the table who have that expertise to come up with a correct bill, so you're not having to run back in 26 and do it all over again. Because also we wondered if there's something urgent going on and why they haven't talked to anybody about that. Is there another community getting ready to fail somewhere? We've tracked them all, and there's only about 3, maybe 4 that might be close to the bubble. But we're not being told anything. And that's the other item we have with the OIR. You know, there's a continuing care commission, governor's continuing care commission, something like that. It basically does nothing. Sorry for anybody who's been on that committee. It basically goes and residents and leading age complain about OIR. That's the whole goal. And I think it needs to be abolished. I think it needs to be a working group of residents and industry people that helps the OIR understand what you need to do to fix an entity that's not doing well, versus just sitting back and waiting for the OIR to hit certain numbers or do whatever they need to do. Let's go in and help them fix it now. We've built 3 of our 11 retirement communities. So we've saved 8 of them. I think we know what we're doing with it. And there are other providers just like us who know to work out a problem institution. Because the last thing I want to do every day or any time during the day is talk about University Village in Tampa Bay. It's not good for business, it's not good for residents, and we don't need to have it happening. So I would love to see legislation that can fix both. And me personally, I wish we could prevent one from going into bankruptcy. And I wish we could do one that the same managers who took them into bankruptcy would not be there after the bankruptcy. That's just a personal thing of mine. It's like, great, we pay off all your debts, and you still get to manage the place for another 3 years and take it back into the hole again. So, sorry, that's just a personal peeve. Yes, sir.
What's the actual catalyst that generated all this interest now to modify these statutes and so forth? And what's the background of those that are pushing it forward?
The background, I believe, or we believe, is related to Unison, University Village. University Village was a CCRC in Tampa Bay. It went bankrupt a number of years ago, and basically because it had a bad actor who was running it. That's basically what happened. Everybody knows what a bad actor is. And basically, somehow, they managed to get the standalone nursing home away from the continuing care retirement community for free. Somehow, as part of their management agreements or some other agreements, they were able to take the nursing home away from the community. The community declined because of that, because they've lost the revenues from that. They filed a bankruptcy. They came out of bankruptcy right before COVID. So between the bad reputation and all the bad press they had and COVID, they really didn't have much of a chance. Yes, we looked at it on 3 separate occasions. And every time we looked at it, the main building, which is a very large building, got worse and worse and worse. The OIR told me that when they went in, about 3 months before it actually closed, they only lasted about 5 minutes because the smell was so bad. So, very sad case, completely sad case. So that's why they're interested in the guaranteed fund. So go back to your question, I believe the OIR needs to put a bill out there, and if it doesn't pass, they can say, we tried, and you didn't prove it. They're the only ones who wrote the bill. And they didn't surprise us with it, but they wouldn't give it to us. So we knew the bill was out there, and from what I understand, we got it from somebody else because they filed sunshine law cases, all kinds of stuff, and they still wouldn't give it up. So they really waited till the last minute, which is just kind of strange. And because I've worked with the OIR for decades and always been willing to help when them writing bills or interpreting things, but it was just strange. They just kind of ripped this thing out there. And remember, the sponsor from the Senate is from Tampa Bay. So he probably needed to make sure there was something out there at the same time. So that's my conspiracy theory, but I think it's a pretty good one, because when you look at it, we really the last time somebody moved out of a retirement community and closed a community, that goes way back in time. I mean, way, way back in time. That goes back to Bishop Gray Inn in Davenport, Florida. But that was a CCRC that would take everything you had. Cars, trailers, furniture, everything as part of your entrance fee, and you basically walk in the door with nothing. Well, they ended up with nothing. The OIR turned them into a rental going forward because they just didn't make it. That was just a bad model. And I think there was one other in St. Petersburg. We took some of the residents, and some of the other residents we took. So the remaining residents at Unison, I think there was like 50 or 70, something like that. Some went to other continuing care retirement communities. One actually bought an entrance fee at one of our communities, which I thought was interesting. And then others went to some rentals down the street, rental communities. So still, very sad case. Wish it wouldn't happen. Wish we could be involved earlier to help stop these from going forward. Next question. Right here. Hi, Marjorie.
Thank you. Appreciate your being here. Having attended the Senate hearing yesterday and having read the bill, I feel like we've been reading two separate bills. The bill that is before the legislature is a broad bill on insurance reform, of which this 651 is a small portion. So they are looking at reforming the insurance crisis, which hit this state after the hurricanes and even before. So I appreciate the fact that you have said that this needed to have the input of both residents and owners, because unfortunately, when your letter hit us, we had not had the opportunity to participate in that discussion before that. So I hope that we will continue in the future to talk together both with FLICRA and with the Leading Age and make sure that we do have a bill going forward that puts residents first and foremost in all kinds of reforms. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Goodness, that was well said. Yes, sir.
I would be a little curious to know where your ox is getting gored here, and I'm speaking to your properties.
Okay.
What is it about this bill that disturbed you? What's the nut? And also, I'd like to know what kind of liens they are. Are they equitable liens? Are they mechanics liens? I understand that they're in a secured position, but they can also be waived by the lien holder.
They have not said in the bill what kind of liens they would be. I would say the liens are probably the most problematic for us because I don't know where the OIR might put them in, or they might not put them in for us. But if they did, more than likely, I could not finish the final phase of Westminster Julington Creek. We have a next phase at Westminster St. Augustine. Westminster Point Pleasant needs almost a complete rebuild, like we did at Westminster Shores. And where would we receive the financing for that going forward? So that's one of my biggest concerns. The other concern is if we can't obtain financing for large capital improvements, I don't want to change our budget philosophy. Monthly fees don't pay for capital costs. I don't want to start doing assessments for large capital improvements. If we had to start replacing the pipes in all these buildings, that's not a $100,000 project. That's a $5, $6, $7, $8, $9, $10 million project because you got a lot of big buildings. So we don't want to get to that point. That's why the liens are, I understand, I'm not legal enough to fully understand the lien method. I basically know what happens when we get liens placed on us and what we have to do, but I don't understand the inner workings. I thought a lien was, in my simple terms, was you didn't pay your bill, we're putting a lien on your property. But I guess not. There is a construction lien and some other liens you can put ahead of time, and that's fine, but it's a construction lien, but we're not building anything. So I don't know how the terms work. That's why we need an attorney who's really good at lien work to help us with this bill and figure out what is the correct terms. Because I don't think the OIR is using, because they've created their own lien section. The liens are already in another section of the Florida statutes, but the OIR has created their own version. Even in their section there, they put in that the sheriff will come out to make sure the property is properly sold upon liquidation. Like, you want to put that in there? The sheriff is coming out to the retirement community to sell the property? It's like they've taken pieces of the lien laws that have already been in place for decades probably and trying to substitute their own, which my guess is they're trying to do a different kind of lien than what you just mentioned. So I'm just not legally required, I don't have that aptitude for that. I need somebody. And I passed it by one attorney and got a miscellaneous response on it. They thought, how do you file a lien if there's no cause? But I knew there was construction liens before then, so. Mhm. Mhm. But what if they take it off, we borrow money, and they put it back on, and then something goes wrong? What I'm saying is the OIR has set themselves up for a problem at the same time. Yeah. Oh, microphone. Okay. Next question. Basically, the answer was, we need to figure out what type of lien they're trying to put on the communities. That's what we're trying to figure out. So, sorry about that. Yes, ma'am.
I'm trying to figure out why you don't have an attorney in-house that specializes in CCRCs. I know
Well-
there's some out there. The state is full of attorneys, and this room is full of attorneys. So it seems to me you'd save yourself some money and hire somebody in-house.
Well, that's a good thought. You believe it or not, there's not that many attorneys that are vetted in Chapter 651. Well, fortunately, we haven't had to use them a lot. So, Florida Bar, Greenberg has one that we know of here in town, but I'm not aware. Fortunately, like I said, we haven't had to use them. Fortunately, we haven't gotten in trouble until the bills come out. Microphone, if I don't want to get yelled at again.
I think you're just a penny pound foolish. You're so big. There are a lot of things that come up that you would like to nip in the bud before it goes to the regulatory agency. I've never worked for a corporation that didn't have a attorney in-house. So you might check with the Florida Bar.
Okay.
And I'm sure there are a lot in Orlando. My brother's there. He's an attorney, and he could. In fact, he specialized in bankruptcy.
Okay. We will take your idea back to Orlando. Next. Anybody else? All right, let's move on to a more positive topic for a while. So I will, probably when I leave on Thursday, I probably will send out something as to where we are at this point, if there is something. So if I don't send it out on Thursday, I'll send it out Friday. It'll go out to all of our communities just as a general update as to where we are. If there's an amendment out there, another amendment out there, it will be on my W Life. We'll have it placed out there for you. Usually the FLICRA communication, they'll have it attached to theirs if they've done it. So, but we'll make sure you have the amendment going forward, and then I'll have whatever comments I have from what changes have been made. So a little bit more positive. Let's talk about goals. This is goals when I was moved to permanent Chief Executive Officer. So these are some of the goals we have for this next year. Then I'm going forward with strategic plan. Update the succession plan. Mary Klein, our Chief Human Resources Officer, is scheduled to retire this June. So she will be leaving. We do have a couple candidates and some internal candidates that we are looking at to replace her. And then the Chief Financial Officer, which I've already told you, we have that replacement in place. As long as the OIR approves her, she will be part of that. So resident satisfaction. One of the big things I think that we're not doing well on is resident satisfaction. We need to do more with that in a number of different areas. And I think the only way to do that is just to start listening more. We just don't listen enough. So Kelly Stromberg has been out here to your community, I'm pretty sure once or twice. Is that right, Shannon? She's been out. Her mission is to finally look at activities and wellness programs because they haven't been touched in decades. It's just really pretty much the same old programs, but it's not her just driving in the programs she wants to do. It's supposed to be with resident input, okay? So she is not here just to throw stuff in from Orlando. She needs your input for that, okay? I even heard a Tai Chi class today at lunch that has been brought to the campus, and I'm not sure why we don't have Tai Chi at the campus. So that's the kind of things we need resident input from, because we're looking for her to increase our activities and wellness areas for that. So it's not related to longevity or anything like that. It's just related to general health and wellness. Okay? I'm not going to put a label on it or anything like that. It's just that simple. Maintenance, I think we're just not doing what we need to do in maintenance. Since I've become CEO, I've seen more maintenance items related to that. Yes, I do answer your email. I think I answer your emails, but I do forward your emails on to other people. The people who work for me now, they understand that if I get an email regarding maintenance, that I will make sure it's handled. It wouldn't like the old way where we just pass it back down the line. That won't happen. It'll be passed back down the line, but I'll need a result very quickly going forward. So can't help you with light bulbs and stuff like that. I'll push that back to the executive director to be done. But somehow we need to increase the maintenance response time and fixing time going forward. It just doesn't work right now. So I don't know if that's bringing in more contract labor, like hiring a plumbing company or air conditioning company first versus having maintenance go out and take a look at the air conditioner, things like that. So we're working through that. Maintenance is coming out of the construction department under Chris Wickberg and going under Jim Pulaski, our Senior Vice President of Operations, and more likely we'll hire some kind of director of maintenance and housekeeping. Housekeeping is the other program we have not spent any time on, and we need to start spending more time on that to verify that we are properly cleaning everything on the campus. So those are two big pushes. Also, there's related to that maintenance is our First Impressions program. We want to make sure that when our staff come out to the communities, that they're looking at the buildings at the same time. They're just not going to the skilled nursing, they're going to assisted living. We want them to actually look when they come in the front gate of the campus and see, is there something wrong? I always go with the example of you've been walking your front door every day for the last month and you didn't notice the paint was peeling. And your favorite relative comes over for dinner and says, hey, your paint's peeling on your front door. And you didn't even see it. And that's what the problem with, that's the goal of the First Impressions. It's not to embarrass the executive director or the maintenance director. It's to help them see things that they might not see. We do it all the time in our homes. We just don't see it because we've just seen it forever, but that needs to stop. So hopefully we can come up with some more. We need to use our current electronic system more so that we can track what's being done and what's not being done on a timely basis and set more standards for that, so going forward. So those are the big ones for maintenance and housekeeping. The new resident survey, we've already tested it once with Holleran. This is a national survey. This is not an internal survey anymore. So we'll be rolling this out. So it will compare ourselves, but compare ourselves nationally to other continuing care retirement communities to see how we stack up. So there was a first set that already came out and has been reviewed with 2 or 3 buildings. The next one will be June. We'll go to all campuses, and we will start at that point. And that will hopefully help us develop more plans to increase resident satisfaction. But our staff doesn't need to wait for a survey for resident satisfaction. It's something they should be doing each and every day. The surveys will be what they are. It could be the survey. You take the survey, the first one night the shrimp were cold, and you have the survey, you take the survey the next day. More than likely, you're not going to give a good food rating at that point. It needs to be each and every day we need to do a good job for you. So that's really the key there. Team member satisfaction surveys, we have done those. We did a little bit better this year than last. We have moved our health insurance to self-insured with the exception of Westminster Oaks. You're on the Capital Health Plan, which is actually a better plan than what we have and a little bit less expensive. Not much. They had a big increase this year, but it's been pretty close. So we'll keep the staff on Capital Health. And then we've merged our 2 retirement plans together for staff, and we have increased the match on the 403B retirement plan from 4% to 5% for them. So, other lines of business, we need to continue timely and manageable growth of our home health. The which I believe is on this campus. Is that correct, Shannon? Home health is here? Okay. Pharmacy, which you've seen, and outpatient therapy and clinics. So the clinic is doing okay with Corona. I would just give it an okay at this point. We're basically just not getting enough business, and we need to figure out how to generate more business for the clinic. So we do own 50% of that through a group called Sunshine Health, but we need to figure out how to generate more business in the Corona clinic. So it actually does make money because they're paying the cost of the nurses. Their redevelopment and refurbishment plans, as you see from the last two hurricanes that we came through, the one that narrowly missed the Oaks this year, we need to harden the Point Pleasant and Bradenton, Shores in St. Petersburg, Julington, and Suncoast campuses from future storms. Obviously, Shores of St. Pete took a big hit, and Bradenton took a big hit. So all the residents are still in units. We expect that probably by April or May, all residents will be back into some kind of units. At Westminster Shores, we're pretty much getting out of the ground floor unit business at this point, and residents have moved into the big buildings that are 11, 12 feet off the ground. So part of the assisted living was destroyed as part of the storms. So at Westminster Shores, we are building the world's tallest assisted living building. So it'll be basically 12 feet off the ground before it starts. So if you can imagine your memory center being 12 feet off the ground before you can get in the front door. So it's a bit of a challenge for us. So we do have at our rental retirement communities, while it does not come out of your funds, it is projects that we are working on. We have capital repairs at Riverside Apartments. That's mainly hardening the campus there on the outside with new windows and waterproofing and sealing on that building. The problem is now, as I say to everybody, the rain has stopped coming straight down. Now it seems to come going at an angle. So buildings weren't designed for rain coming at an angle. So, and the windows are fairly old at that property. Riverside House, we borrowed money for that. They borrowed money from that. Westminster did not borrow that money. White Sands and College Arms. And then for the first time, we are researching tax credits for our property in DeLand. Tax credits are a very different project for us. They provide a lot of good funding. We still retain the community for the most part, but we're able to put capital money into that without us coming from Westminster or anybody else. So, and now I talked about the First Impression program. In addition to the strategic plan, I put this out there. Everybody hates it, but we want to get back to 95% occupancy overall. And you can see we're doing well. Oaks, this was a couple weeks ago, 95.7. Suncoast at 96. Shores at 99.5. Julington at 98.2. St. Augustine at 97.2. And Lakeland, who we just took in December of 24, they were at 70 some odd percent. They're already at 95.1. It's interesting when you have an actual marketing person actually selling units on the campus, how many units you can sell. It's just, wow. Why don't we actually put a marketing person? They had a marketing person who just said, when people come in, we'll sell them a unit. Like, well, that doesn't work. So you've got to have somebody there. So we've added that. And they were also, for their skilled nursing, they were taking their contract residents, their entrance fee contract residents, but they weren't taking any residents that had a high acuity level. They were only taking the good residents. And in the hospital world, if you only take the good residents, you get no residents going forward from the hospital because you have to take your share of good and bad. So we started taking care of good and bad residents, and their occupancy picked right up. So Towers Orlando doing well at 94.4. Winter Park, Palms. Palms is mostly their skilled nursing. It's all private pay skilled nursing, 32 units. They currently have 11 beds filled. And then Bradenton, 83.9. That is mainly due to independent living. So we've had some issues down there with one of their big buildings called the Shores Building that we are working on. But that campus is a challenge for it. But still, overall, we're at 93.1%. So you should be very proud of the Oaks, sitting there at 95.7%, so very high. And once again, we just need to sell a net gain over 71 units over 10 months. It's just kind of a math thing for us. So strategic goals, complete the internal growth plans for residential living and memory care. St. Augustine, we have independent living units going up, are almost done as we speak. They should open in April. Jillington Creek, their expansion should be underway later this year. We're under the final 2 phases of that rebuild of that campus. When we started there way back in 2000, we've been rebuilding that campus ever since. So it's taken us basically 24 years to get to the last 2 phases. Westminster Suncoast is getting ready to convert their 120-bed health center, convert it down to 72 beds and approximately 32 to 34 units of memory care. That community has only, out of 120 beds, they only have 11 entrance fee residents in their health center. So it's time to convert that. And also, too, we're starting to hear a lot of rumbles from the Fed and the state that there might be some cuts in Medicaid coming forward. So we'll just have to wait and see how that turns out for everybody. So that's the biggest concern with skilled nursing. The labor has leveled off. Obviously, we had the big wage increases during COVID, but for most part, that has leveled out now and back to normal. But the problem is the reimbursement will probably start to see a decline again or go flat. We did have a big increase this year because of the Medicaid plan, but that could be reduced going forward. And I talked about Westminster Shores fast-tracking their assisted living units. And then we have out there approvals for expansion, replacement, renovations of Westminster Point Pleasant. So we have a big property in Westminster Point Pleasant right downtown. And what's happened is they've changed the zoning rules. And basically, if we were to take down a building, we could not build back the same number of units because of the way the flood zones and the title things have changed. So that's the issue there. So we're trying to get some amendments to change that. We're not sure where we'll end up with that. Then we need to talk about our contacts with adjacent property owners. As you know, we've got one big chunk of property that's here into Westminster Oaks. We've had discussions with that over the years. I've asked Shannon to make another attempt at that property because we do need to acquire that one since it's right on our campus. I have no idea what that property would be worth, but it would be worth it to get that large piece of property. And then Lake County, we do have property in Lake County. That will remain on hold for a land grant at this point. That market has changed. We were going to build an active adult community there. The market has greatly changed. There's a lot of active adult going into that area, and it just doesn't make sense at this point. So we're going to land bank it for a while and either sell it at some point or build on it at some point, but not at the present time. So we basically have 4 pieces of land like that. We have Fruitland Park, Mount Dora, Howey in the Hills. Jillington Creek has 600 acres in St. Augustine. It's currently a pine farm, so there's nothing on it. And basically we lease it to the sheriff of the county for a hunting lease because there's literally nothing out there. And then we have another piece of property in Lakeland. We have additional land in Lakeland. So complete implementation of the revised wellness and longevity, now referred to as healthy aging programs. That's going to continue. You have a question? Okay, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I wondered, I noticed that the strategic goals listed many of the properties, but there wasn't a strategic goal for Westminster Oaks.
They're part of it. They're part of the infrastructure studies. We have no current plans for expansions on this campus. The infrastructure studies are going to cause you headaches enough. The infrastructure studies are basically to take a look at the inside of the buildings, okay? The pipes, sewer pipes, stacks, all that lovely stuff you see back there, because this campus opened when? 1982. So it's time. So our CEOs from many years ago said, you know, we don't replace roofs until they leak. So I don't follow that philosophy. So we're going to need to look at these and see what the age of the pipes are so they don't break. And, oh, yeah, we need to replace them because they finally failed. Because pipes only break on what floor? The top floor. That's correct. They only break on the top floor. They never break on the first floor. I'm telling you, it's a rule somewhere. But that's the purpose of the infrastructure studies. So what you'll see on this campus is you're going to start to see work behind the walls. And I heard that today when I was in Shannon's conference room. I heard the work above them doing something, and it was very loud. So you're going to hear some work like that. Those studies are expected to be back into this month, 1st of April, and then we'll dissect them. And we're hoping to create a 1-year, 3-year, 5-year, 10-year plan for continued renewal and replacement and try to get out of the deferred maintenance programs. We got to stop waiting till it breaks and start doing it ahead of time. So that'll be bulk of the work here at Westminster Oaks. I don't see a need. There's already 600 units on this campus, so I don't see a need for new construction here. We have no plans to convert the health center to anything else but the 120 beds at the present time. So really, sorry to say, there's no big work. The lower level, they are waiting for permits to be approved at this point. Basically, that came from me when I found out the building was flooded. I was kind of, in a way, happy because I was glad to see we could get rid of the Magic Kingdom Main Street look and the lower level. That's what our CEO loved. And if you're familiar with our campus, we have about 3 campuses that still have that same look, the Disney look. So that will be going away down there. So we wanted to meet with resident council and redevelopments going forward. Well, I can see we get mixed reviews on that. Maybe we should go with a universal look going forward. I don't know. So, but we did meet with residents and got input from residents on what needs to be down there, working with Kelly Strandberg. Do we need to move any walls or move things around so that the structure can go forward? We weren't just going to paint, patch, and put it back to where it was. We needed to make sure it was time. It was time to redo that area. So it's unfortunate it came through that. Also, I didn't mention the Oaks as part of the hardening plan. They have replaced the pumps at where the water came in. We will probably be adding another device that if the pumps fail, basically this device would come up and block the water coming in case there's another 100-year rain. So that's the other thing we're looking at the same time. So that was the infrastructure studies. And then we have IT review going on. That's part of the strategic plan is to look at all of our infrastructure for IT to see where we're going to be. We have those results at the end of April to see where we need to be going forward with our IT. And then resident satisfaction. I'm going to finish on a positive note since we talked about a lot of unhappy stuff. So just have some plain old fun. Anybody know what the 101 uses of a parking garage is? This is Westminster Towers. On the top floor, they had a night under the stars. So they served dinner on the top of their parking deck. There you can see. That's Westminster Towers in the background on the left. So they hauled all this furniture over there. They actually brought grills over that they had, large grills over, and they cooked the food right there on top of the 5th story of that parking garage. And yes, I'm bringing back pictures of food just so you'll know. Okay, that is coming back. That's what they served. Some dancing was going on. It was a little bit early, I thought, but that's okay. So. You can always try a happy hour. It always tastes better when you have free bartenders. In case you don't recognize me, I'm the guy in the kind of purplish shirt. This is me serving as the bartender, which is an extremely difficult job. Opening wine, I appreciate screw top wine bottles so much more now. Because opening those cork ones is a pain, especially as fast as the residents were coming up, to the line. But a very fun event. Gary Hennis has done it also at Westminster Winter Park. And then, of course, it's called the Westminster Games, but it's actually the Winter Games. So I don't know if anybody's in the back still can play that video or not. For those of you who were not there, there was a short video we had done. She's going now to see if she can get it to work. Sorry, I didn't warn you ahead of time. My apologies. Very good time for residents. It was extremely cold. It was maybe 50 degrees in that morning, and we had a big covered pavilion at Eckerd College, and yes, we just kind of all walked around it. So we walked around the edge where it was all nothing but sun. So let's see if she gets it to work. There we go. I leave you with that. That's what we need to get to. That's what we need to start worrying about, is how to have fun. Get away from 651, get away from maintenance issues, get away from all that stuff. Just get back to enjoying your retirement. So any other questions while I'm here? I need your microphone, because we got yelled at before. It's almost 4:30. I'll get you out of here by 4:30. I promise. Yes, sir.
I was just wondering, not as a matter of idle curiosity, but our Westminster Oaks funds, the money that we put, the residents put in to Westminster Oaks in our,
Foundation?
no, the fee that we pay to join
Mhm.
and our monthly fees, are those monies commingled at all with monies from any other Westminster facility?
Yes, all the funds are commingled throughout the obligated group. They are not commingled with our rental retirement communities, but they are commingled with all the continuing care retirement communities.
Okay, so you just got one big bucket and we all draw out of the same bucket?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and the other rumor that was floating around while she's getting the microphone to somebody is, yes, we have filed every required quarterly and annual report with the Office of Insurance Regulation as required by Chapter 651. There was a rumor that we had never filed any reports. Yes, we have filed every report. Otherwise, we'd be in hazardous condition, administrative supervision, and a few hundred other things. So, yes, we have filed every report. Yes, sir.
Your last slide before the pictures and movies and so on mentioned an IT ongoing review. Could you tell us how far along that is, and when it is finished, will we be seeing it so the residents can participate?
I thought a group of residents had already participated, but I'll have to check that. You make me wonder now. But no, that study, we'll receive that study from Parasol, I believe, in the middle of April.
What is Parasol? Could you say-
Parasol is a consulting company outside of Westminster that does this for other retirement communities.
Yeah.
They're basically looking at all the software we use, the software that we own and don't use, and figuring out what's the best way for them to work together, interact. Good example is MyWLife
Yeah.
and PCC not working well together,
Yeah.
those kind of things. Resident Channel is not working well right now because of the old technology. But looking at all those, looking at internet capabilities, expanding that in the common areas going forward, lots of things like that. It's just not internal systems, but it's also external. It's also resident systems at the time. If you're not familiar with our systems, it's basically two. One is the business system, and one is everything else.
And the everything else part of it is what the residents see from a day-to-day experience. And I'm surprised to see that I didn't see on your 2025 list of items to be done anything related to technology or AI uses. Is the corporation at all moving in that direction?
We have the IT goals, and I think that covers it.
But we don't know what they are.
That's true. That's a good point.
Well, could we get them?
That's true. No, it's a well point taken. I have to agree with that.
The question simply is, will we get them?
Yes. Yes, the first parts of that is the expansion and revision of the current common areas, Wi-Fi throughout the communities, hoping to be able to actually Wi-Fi the common area grounds, which is a little bit more challenging to do, but those are kind of the areas that we're working on through that. And then what systems? Kelly Stromberg is leading that charge for the most part, is interactions for that. We'd like to see more residents utilizing their phones or their iPads or stuff to look at menus today. I noticed the chairperson of the Resident Council was looking up the menu today when we were sitting at the table. She was also looking at some other things on MyWLife. So there are things we need to do better. I'm not sure if I'm big on technology like robots. We have some robots who bring out food, it's loaded in the kitchen, brought out. It's cute, but I'm not sure it really does anything. We've experimented that on a couple campuses, so it kind of strikes a box, but I don't know. We'll see going forward. But good question. And yes, I got a question over here. Here's your microphone right behind you.
I'm a person who lives independently and has, for 3 months, went ahead and got our half 15-day or 15 meals for the dining room. And I really enjoyed going over with some of my neighbors and so on, and the rush to be sure you try to use all 15. But my problem was, and still is, and I don't see it in the long-range plan, that there is a movement, and it's probably stronger in Tallahassee with the university here than elsewhere, but people are moving more toward plant-based foods and vegetarian diets. And our leader understands all of that very well. I would like to see more leadership from the central office to make sure that a person who wants to eat a vegetarian meal can do that anytime they want to go with their neighbors.
Okay. So is there anybody here that's meeting with Jim Pulaski and Mario in the next few weeks? They're coming to the Oaks. Should be some members from the dining committee. Whoever that is, take that back, because they need to hear that as part of that, because they're working on resident satisfaction in dining. We need to make sure that all the menus are expanded for everybody. Can we solve everybody's menu problem? I don't know, but we can offer plant and vegetarian based.
And we can't count on surveys that only survey people who eat in the dining room.
Oh, that's fair. I think the Holleran surveys look at all of it. I think every resident, even the ones that don't eat in the dining room, can answer those surveys. Yeah, I think they can. Next question. All right, thank you.
Wait,
Yes,
I have
sorry.
just a quick announcement. Joyce Andrews, if you are in the room, can you see Kelly back here in the corner before you go, please? Joyce Andrews.
You're in
Okay.
trouble. You're in
Kelly's
trouble.
right
now.
over here. You need to check out with her.
All right, thank you so much. I get to go back and do more OIR stuff, so thank you.